Hello and welcome to a special edition of On the Agenda. Normally, this is the City of Reno podcast that aims to keep you informed on actions taken at city council meetings and the work happening across the biggest little city. But since this is our final episode of the year, we thought we would do something a little different. Today's episode is a year-end look back at 10 episodes of 2025, some of the topics, conversations, and decisions that helped shape the City of Reno over the past year. In no particular order, because there's many episodes. We are calling it Off the Agenda. Do you see what I did there? I'm AJ from the City of Reno's communications team, and joining me, as always, Reno City Manager Jackie Bryant. Hello, Jackie.
Hi, AJ.
How are you? How's the year been? It's been a lot.
It has been a lot.
It's been a very packed year, but the best thing to come from it, this show, this podcast.
I don't know if that's the best thing, but it's a good thing.
It's one thing to come from this year.
We had lots of great things happening this year.
Now, you may be thinking, but AJ, there are 20 episodes, and you are correct. But for time's sake, we are doing just 10 episodes in no particular order or importance, just topics that maybe you missed. Don't worry, we will shamelessly promote the other ones as well.
We covered a wide range of issues in 2025, from housing and public safety to infrastructure, community programs, how C-tax and property tax work, and even the city's budget. This episode is a chance to step back from a single council meeting and take a broader look at what happened throughout the year and reflect on the amazing work by our city staff and decisions council has made.
So let's get started with our first clip of 2025. That is our first episode. We started the show by going back to basics, how city council meetings work, how agendas are built, and how residents can follow along and participate.
This episode really set the tone for On the Agenda, focusing on transparency and making local government more accessible to the community. The easiest way to get information about council and its agendas is to go to reno.gov. There you can find out when our council meetings are occurring, and you can find out what is on the agenda.
Speaking of agendas, this is On the Agenda after all. How quickly are those updated?
Minimum of 3 business days.
3 business days, so not the weekend.
Council meeting, that's right. We don't count the weekends or holidays. You will find all of the information that they will be discussing and deciding on, including staff reports, exhibits, detailed information on what they will be voting on.
So it's on Wednesday, on Friday, I can go and find it. I can be like, hey, where's my stuff? It's all here on reno.gov/meetings.
That's correct. At least Friday by 8 a.m. It should all be there.
Our website is a great. With that foundation in place, we now turn to what seemed like the most spoken about and most misunderstood topic of the summer, Reno's new accessory dwelling unit ordinance, or ADUs. Many feared the worst, but were pleasantly surprised at the outcome.
We were joined by Development Services' Grace McAdon to talk about why the ordinance was developed, how community feedback shaped it, and what residents need to know moving forward.
Yeah, we did a tremendous amount of engagement. I mean, that's something I'm really proud of with this ordinance, more than I've ever seen in my time at this city. And a lot of that was just due to the interest around accessory dwelling units. But it kind of started in January of 2024. The city conducted a survey. We got over 2,000 responses, which is huge. We really pushed this survey everywhere in our social media platforms, on Nextdoor, email blasts, and a majority of these responses kind of generally supported ADUs. Then we did some outreach, included some presentation to the neighborhood advisory boards, or NABs, some social media, local media, press releases. So we were really everywhere in that early 2024 timeline. And then from January of March of this year, we actually drafted an ADU ordinance and then conducted outreach again to get the public's input on that specific draft.
Grace, one of my favorite videos I've recorded was the one for the ADU video, actually, where I'm fighting away water bottles and you're like, it's so silly. Like telling people what I do. They're like, what? But when you see it, it makes sense.
You know, surprisingly, we got a lot of interest from that video. Yes. I had like my in-laws text me every time I'm on the news, but then, you know, my friends text me from that video and they're like, what's going on? Like, what are you doing?
So let's say AJ, want to add an ADU to my lot. How do I get started on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we are going to get this ADU guide posted on our website. And so that's kind of a great place to start. Okay. And it has all of our requirements, the setbacks, the design standards that we've discussed, all of those kind of different requirements laid out in there. And then you can also always call us. We'll tell you what your zoning is, what different standards you have, if we have any, flexibility or relief just based on your specific situation. And so it's not a one case fits all. If you
This next one was a twofer. We looked at the new North Valleys Corporation Yard and how the city supports affordable housing projects.
In this episode, we'd learn how fee waivers are helping bring more affordable housing to our community with housing manager Elaine Wiseman. We also heard from Director of Maintenance and Operations Travis Truehill, who explains how the new North Valley Corporation Yard will improve city services by reducing travel time, cutting costs, and developing quicker maintenance responses to residents in the area.
This project, we really feel that it's going to achieve or help us get closer anyhow to achieving our strategic goals for just improving operational efficiencies throughout the city. The North Valleys is considerably further away than a lot of the other areas of town.
Right.
And the courtyard right now, the city's courtyard, is centrally located fairly close to downtown. Mm-hmm. So it can take us 30 minutes plus to get to areas we need to in the North Valleys. And then there's also the travel time back.
Right.
And depending on the projects we're working on, there's also needing to mobilize numerous pieces of equipment to that job site. So being able to put what we're calling a satellite facility, and really it's a scaled down version of our courtyard right now up in the North Valleys, that satellite facility will allow us to get to the job sites faster, reduce fuel use, improve wear and tear that we see in the vehicles, and allow us during especially emergency operations or snowplow operations to be able to get the equipment where it's needed quicker.
Right, because North Valleys it's big out there, and there's a lot of things. There's a lot of roads, a lot of lane miles. Let's say it's a plow driver who gets the call and is a little closer to the North Valleys. They can just get out there in 5 minutes as opposed to 15, 20 minutes.
Absolutely.
Which is a lot in an emergency, too. Something breaks, sewer line goes down, or a lift station floods. Wow, that's fantastic. Access to childcare impacts families and the local economy. And this episode focused on a new childcare ordinance introduced in Reno. One staggering statistic we learned in this episode is how childcare can actually cost more than tuition.
Yeah, that was absolutely huge.
It's crazy.
Grace from Development Services joined us again. We discussed how removing zoning barriers can help expand childcare options while still being mindful of neighborhood impacts.
It's less intense of a process. So a CUP usually takes about 65 days. It has to go to Planning Commission, and it's also almost $5,000 for that permit. And what we find is if you're a childcare provider, you're not well versed in presenting these things to Planning Commission. It's really intimidating to go up in front of a body like that and present your case. With a minor conditional use permit, we still notice the neighbors. We still have this public process, but staff is able to hold your hand a little bit more through the process and work with the applicant instead of sending them in front of this body that maybe a developer is more apt for that
Sure,
type of
and does it
environment.
cost less money for the permitting process for an MUP?
Correct. Yep. An MUP is about $4,300 and a CUP is almost $5,000.
But in this case, what did you do with respect to MUP fees?
For MUPs, just for in-home and workplace, we got rid of that requirement so they wouldn't have to pay that fee.
So there's no fees at all now for...
There is a fee for childcare centers, but they're
Sure.
just paying that reduced fee.
But
for
for
the
the
in-home,
in-home?
correct, no fee.
Nothing.
Correct.
C-Tax is one of the city's largest revenue sources, but it's not always well understood. This episode begins Director of Finance Vicki Van Buren's marathon run of appearances on our show as she is joined by urban economist Jason Gortari.
And here we break down where C-Tax comes from, how it's distributed, why it matters, and what it could mean for the future of community services.
I think a great example is the example that we heard in our presentation and that we've been using in our public outreach is what the city receives on $100 taxable sales transaction. Let's say you, AJ, go to a local hardware store in Reno, spend $100 on a lawnmower, and you pay $827 in sales tax. Only 69 cents of that is coming back to Reno. So to put that in perspective, you pay $827, less than $1 is coming back to Reno. So a very small portion.
And where does the rest of that money go? Because this project started because people would ask me, what are you doing with all the sales tax that we pay? And I'm like, well, I don't think we collect it all, but I need to do the work to figure it out. How much do we actually get? And as it turns out, of the $8.27 that a person pays on $100 goods, Reno receives 69 cents. Where does the rest go?
About half goes back to the state of Nevada to support a variety of their programs and state education. There's other local purposes that it supports, and then a small portion goes to the C-tax formula, where it's distributed using the formula, and it ultimately ends up being 69 cents that comes back to Reno.
That's interesting. If you've opened Facebook recently, you've probably heard about tax increment financing, or TIFs. But what is it?
Well, Brian McCardle, Revitalization Manager at the City of Reno, took time to stop by and explain how TIFs work, what safeguards exist, and how the Redevelopment Agency Board evaluates potential community benefits.
So let me start off that last August, we were fortunate enough to re-energize our redevelopment agency, which is, it's existed since 1983, but we haven't used it in 15 years. And redevelopment agencies, they exist across the nation. 48 states have redevelopment agencies, and redevelopment agencies have the ability to capture property tax created by projects to be reinvested in a specific area. And tax increment financing, which is TIF, is one of the main tools that redevelopment agencies have to facilitate investment and projects that might not have happened without this tool. And so the way tax increment financing works is it's a way to help projects get financed with the future property tax that they create. And the risk is that without this finance tool, these projects might never get built in the first place. And so we hear people saying you're giving money away. And the answer is, while we are supporting a project, this project won't occur in the first place. Those future property taxes won't materialize anyways if we don't find a way to support this project. And being in Reno a very long time, we all know that there's been promise of projects in the past that never get finished or developed. And usually it comes down to funding, financing, and other issues. And so tax increment financing is a way to get those projects over the finish line and make them work.
Many decisions that affect Reno happen at the state level, and this episode looked back at the 83rd Nevada legislative session.
Yes, being a Dillon's Rules state, the City of Reno can only do what the Nevada legislature says we can do. In this session, there were over 1,200 bills introduced at the state legislature, with 500 of them directly affecting Reno. Government Affairs Manager Nick joined us to discuss some of these bills, including one that secured $5.25 million in rental assistance, ADUs, and cocktails to go.
But it also talks about making sure that we have alternative funding mechanisms to replenish the costs associated with city-subsidized affordable housing projects. What do we mean when we say that? The City of Reno waived about $12 million for affordable housing projects based on sewer connection fees as well as building permit fees. The governor's housing bill, one of our big wins or something I'm very proud of this session, included $25 million in that for local governments to waive those fees and to replenish the costs of having waived those fees.
Oh, wow.
We also were able, on the affordable housing front, to secure $5.25 million in rental assistance to keep people housed.
So Assembly Bill 475, you secured, what, $5.25 million for the City of Reno?
So Assembly
Amazing.
Bill 375 created a process for cities and counties to go about allowing for cocktails to go. It's not mandating. It'll be a conversation that the City Council will have with the community. But the interesting thing about that bill, it also makes the Pecan Punch, a Basque drink, the state drink of the state of Nevada. So,
Now, they've been trying to do that for decades, right?
well, they finally won the fight.
Yeah. And I see how they paired it up with the ability to deliver alcohol.
Yes.
I learn a lot from my coworkers in these podcasts. The one thing I will never forget is John Flansburgh's fun fact about sewer use and how much we could fill up a football stadium. You'll hear it in the clip, so I won't spoil it. But wow is all I can say.
Trina Magoon, Director of Utility Services, and John Flansburgh, Regional Infrastructure Administrator, stopped by to explain how our underground wastewater system works, why maintaining it is essential to public health, and the critical challenges the city is facing with aging infrastructure and treatment capacity.
In the city of Reno, if you were to take all the sewage that comes from our businesses and our residents, and you wanted to quantify that, think of a football field. And think of from the back of end zone to back of end zone. So not 100 yards, but 120 yards in length. from the sideline to sideline and then take it up 10 feet, which is the bottom of the goalpost, we would fill 5.8 football fields every single day.
Oh,
AJ
That's
didn't
just
watch
getting
the
started.
presentation yesterday. He's getting the visual in real time.
so if our sewer system were to fail, hopefully it does not, what does that look like? Where do the 5 football fields go?
You know, failure is not an option. That's pretty much the bottom line for us. However, there are things environmentally that can happen that are not good in terms of having sewage that isn't treated the way that it should be going into a water body. And a lot of our water bodies, I mean, you know, fishable, swimmable, drinkable, all those different things, and we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I had told council, for instance, I would much rather be in the headlines because I was asking for approval of a rate increase than to ever be in the headlines because we had a major failure or consent decree.
Now, many wastewater treatment systems only have primary and secondary treatment. The Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility has tertiary treatment because we have very strict requirements on the water quality and the nutrient levels that we can send into the Truckee River because the Truckee River is such a pristine water body.
So I guess to put it another way, you can't dump sewage directly into the Truckee River,
We cannot.
although a long time ago, that's the way it was, but we don't do that anymore. The water has to be as clean as the Truckee River when you are done cleaning it, when you put it back in. Is that fair to say?
Essentially, yes.
Parks are a big part of quality of life here in Reno, and this episode explored how Parks and Recreation is funded.
We spoke with Nathan Iliad, Director of Parks and Recreation, about several grants for Parks and Rec programs, which include adaptive mountain biking, the River Ranger Initiative, and CPR training units. We talked about grants, long-term planning, and how different funding sources come together to support facilities and programs across the city.
Officially, there are 87 parks, and there's also 5 to 6 plaza spaces that we maintain, including landscaping. We also have landscape maintenance districts, which are really exciting. Essentially, it's for spaces that don't have an HOA, but they have some right-of-way landscaping and things in the roadway. So Parks and Rec and the Park Maintenance Division oversees the maintenance of that through a contract. So a lot of space, a lot of trails, a lot of everything people don't think about that usually falls to us. A lot of river path, those types of things.
How do we fund parks? There's no money tree growing in Idlewild, right? There's like
That's correct. Yeah, we haven't found the seeds for that yet. But I think traditionally in Reno, it's been primarily through the general fund, right? Through essentially a tax subsidy. So these are services and have been seen as services for a long time. Typically, parks are a service. They're an infrastructure piece. So the maintenance side is almost 100% a subsidy. There's very little revenue that comes in as a part of operations. So if you think of our revenues as a 3-legged stool, right? A subsidy through tax base, and then we're looking at growing our operational revenue, which is more on the recreation side, right? So you pay for a program, you participate, you're the only one who participated. The rest of the tax base doesn't contribute equally to that. So they do from a park infrastructure standpoint because that's free, but for a program, you'll pay a fee to participate since that's a benefit to you individually or to your family, right? And then that third leg of the stool would be that non-operational revenue, which is kind of what was on the agenda this week, which is grants, which is sponsorship, things like that, where we're not operating a program, but we're allowing people to, from a sponsorship perspective, to sponsor it and bring that to the community on behalf of their company, their organization, their nonprofit, and then grants, of course, which could be through the government or through nonprofit and foundations. So those are the kind of the 3-legged stool, and I think for a long time it's been off balance with the tax base funding Parks and Rec, and so now we're trying to lengthen those other legs of the stool so we have a nice balance and that we're a little more resilient from challenges.
So you're. Last but not least, we wrap by focusing on something residents care about every day: Reno's streets and those damn potholes.
Yes, Carrie Koski, Director of Public Works, was on our second episode ever to discuss the $8 million allocated towards street rehabilitation and preventative maintenance projects. We learned how street projects are prioritized and why preventative maintenance helps save money and also reduces disruption time.
And our streets have a number associated with each one of them. We call it the Pavement Condition Index. And our folks go around every 3 years and we check basically the condition of each one of those streets. The range is from 0 to 100. and 0 being like a really poor street, mostly gravel. 100 would be a newly paved street. So in our street program, we look at streets that have 55 and below are in the sort of failed category, we call that. And then the ones above that are in a better category and receive maintenance dollars. So these two contracts here is how we decide, what determines that, where that money goes, is we try to keep our good streets in good condition. And what I liken that to is your vehicle, your car. So you want to do your oil changes and all of your maintenance along the way that they recommend. Well, that's what we do for streets when we money into maintenance, like slurry seals, cape seals. That we find is very effective way to keep our good streets good.
Looking back at these episodes, it's clear that 2025 was a busy year here at the City of Reno. This was only 10 episodes. We have 10 more you should definitely listen to. They cover adaptive programs for veterans, budget-related info, and so much more, so definitely check those out.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in and took the time to learn more about how their city works. I want to thank our dedicated city staff, Reno City Council members, and the community partners for their work throughout the year. And many, many thanks to our residents for staying engaged and being informed.
We will be back in 2026 with new episodes of On the Agenda and even more City Council meetings. Until then, thank you for listening, and from all of us at the City of Reno, we wish you a safe and happy new year.